monuments meant, but I actually read this book that described about Mount Cassino, and it really fit
I have
with.
some stories in regard to that.
Yeah, I remember that.
Just to give you a general list, this is the areas I covered during my stay in overseas.
Oh, so you typed this all out. I wonder if I can get, let's see. Okay. All the different places that you, oh my gosh, that's really great. Okay, I think I'll just take a regular photo of that too, if I may.
But we covered a lot of area, I'll tell you that. And
No kidding.
very often I think about what happened over there. I can't help but think how lucky I was.
Yes. I'm thinking about in September, I can't shake, I'm shaking. Why am I shaking? Of kind of retracing some of your steps.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. But I think I'm going to pass on North Africa.
Yeah. Well, it might be an interesting place.
Yeah.
I tell you, at the time, the interesting cartoon was this here. Oh, geez, I forget what they call it. Sad sack, I guess it was. And here's an illustration. The guy's sitting and they're going overseas, and he gets beat up, and he finally leaves, and that's. But we'll go with this. Actually, we got through the Straits of Gibraltar, and we landed in Iran, and that was about a week after the campaign started. And we were a small outfit, and we were supposed to join some outfit that was about halfway short of Algiers. And we went inland because when you travel along the shore there, the Germans were still pretty strong. So we went inland to the Atlas Mountains, and we cut across. We had a company caravan, you might say, of about probably 15 trucks, and we were traveling. We were following the 2nd Armored Division, and we were following them, but we were sort of on our own. And we headed inland, and we went through the Atlas Mountains. And I have a story in regard to that. We stopped at, and then the whole place is pretty barren. There's practically no trees or anything. We stopped on top of a hill, and down and below us, with about 1,000 yards, was a pretty big stream. We woke up in the morning, and we saw about probably 1,000 yards away from us was an Arab village. Now, an Arab village, I tell you can smell them from miles away, and they're all in a group. They have probably about 100 yards, it's completely circled, and they keep. They don't let anybody in there. And if you went in there, you'd have to hold your nose all the time. Yeah. But anyway, we stopped there, and we woke up in the morning, and we wanted to go down to that creek down there and probably wash up a little bit. Went down there, and there was a bunch of women. They were washing clothes there. They were Arabs. And the way they wash clothes, they take them and beat them on rocks. Right, yeah. And I observed them, and I said, boy, these people live a miserable life. And I wash clothes here, and every time I go down and wash clothes, I think of them poor women slamming them clothes against the rocks. And that's the one thing I really remember of that incident. And it's something I remember a long time. Oh, I have some pictures here. After the war, I played an awful lot of golf. And this is one of my favorite.
One of your favorite photos?
I'll give you that photo.
Oh, that is a good one.
Yeah, I got it.
Oh, that's a great one. Howard Karkhoff is among the senior favorites. Yeah. But this was 1984.
Yeah, that was quite some time later. But anyway, we started across North Africa. And I took some of these pictures at Iran, and some place called Goat Hill. We had a coastal view, and I didn't have a very good camera at that time, but as you were going through the on your convoy, going through the villages, well, this is what you do actually see: the bunch of kids coming, candy, candy.
Oh,
and
they were looking for
Americans-
candy.
Well, we were feeding on C rations, like, and also K rations, and they always had about 3 or 4 pieces of candy. And so most soldiers, they had candy with them. And at that time, we were with the 3rd Army Corps, or the 1st Army Corps.
Okay, First Army Corps.
Yeah, and we traveled through all of North Africa.
And that is, I remember you had mentioned you would call Patton Blood and Guts Patton.
Yeah, that's what it did. Man. I tell you, he was very strict. I remember we got as far as Algiers, and they declared Algiers an open town.
And an open town meant that it was
Well,
controlled
no,
by, nobody.
Well, no firing, or the war was supposed to be kept away. And we couldn't go to town unless you wore a tie and your dark uniform, and this is in the middle of summer. And most of the guys said, "To heck with it, I'm not going to go to town, suffer just to see some town." Anyway, this is the currency we were using at the time, and we finally, there's another picture of my brothers, I think.
Oh, okay,
You'll probably see
yeah.
it.
And this is where some of you were in the service?
Yeah.
Yeah.
In fact, we were all in the service.
Yep.
I'll have to tell you a story
Oh,
about
yeah.
that too. You know, at that time, they had service stars that people would hang in the window.
Yes.
And at one time, my mother was the only one living home. All 5 boys were in the service.
Oh, just a second.
My father was up in Alaska. He was working at a army camp up there in maintenance. And my mother, she was renting out the house to nurses who were training on 36th and Lake.
Oh.
And so she had about 4 or 5 girls in the house at all times. And then she finally decided that she was going up with my dad. So she went up to Alaska, and she stayed there for about 4 months, and they finally made it home. But anyway.
You know, I think Lawrence mentioned coming home while all the girls were there.
Yeah, I think he probably did,
Yeah.
because what he could do, you weren't permanently attached to
To a company or
no,
to a
no,
ship.
actually they were all working as individuals.
Individuals,
just hire
yeah.
out, and you could take a trip and come back, and you'd be free until the draft board caught up with you.
Okay.
And then you'd have to rejoin the merchant marine again. So that's it. He was continually coming home and then stay for a while and then rejoin. And he had a buddy who lived down the block, and they went together quite a bit with a merchant marine.
Yep.
Well, anyway, this is Christmas Day in '43. Oh, they ended up in Bizerti,
North Africa, right?
North Africa.
Tunisia.
Yep. And there, it was a very unusual situation. There was a pretty important base, and they had a channel leading to a lake that was probably located about 2 miles inland. And all the merchant marine ships that came in, they usually went into the lake because they could get better protection that way. And Bizerti was going to be the kickoff point for going to Sicily. Well, anyway, we were out of town, perhaps about 3 miles, sitting on top of a hill. And practically every night, the Germans would send over airplanes trying to catch a ship in the channel so they could block the channel.
Oh, so they could sink the ships that would block the channel. Yeah, yeah.
And the British, at that time, they were using searchlights, and they had anti-aircraft guns. They had them all over the place. British, some French troops, the American troops, and we'd sit there, and practically every night at about 9:30, German planes would come over and try to catch somebody in the channel. And everybody would just open up at them. I mean, there must have been a surplus of ammunition or something.
Yeah, they had.
But they would fly over. The British would put a spotlight on them, and as soon as the spotlight got on an airplane, well, everybody for 5 miles around would start firing. And I tell you, you had to duck under a truck to keep yourself protected because there was so much shrapnel in the air.
Oh my goodness!
And
yeah.
if you didn't, I knew 2 guys that were injured. They stayed out in dugouts, and they were injured by shrapnel coming down.
Yeah.
But anyway, this went on night after night, and you could almost we'll wake up about 10:30 or 11 o'clock, and the Germans would be coming over and we'd let loose. And I tell you, it was the biggest firecracker exhibition you'd ever see. I tell you, the British, they must have had about probably a couple thousand anti-aircraft guns there with searchlights. And as soon as the searchlight got on a plane, well, everybody would start firing. They say, "We're going to get these guys."
Yeah. Yeah.
And one night, you usually take protection under a truck because the shrapnel was so bad. And first thing we looked up, and there was a plane coming at us. It was full. It was fire. It was just going in a dive, and it was on fire.
It was on fire. Okay, yeah.
And the thing hit about probably 400 yards away from us.
Whoa.
A heck of an explosion. And in the morning, we went over there, and the only thing we saw was the penis of the pilot.
No kidding, really? That was what was left?
That's the only thing that survived, because the plane was completely blown up.
Yeah, no kidding.
Because he must have had some heavy ammunition in it when it blew up.
Yeah.
But this went on.
Can't forget that one.
No, and this went on for almost, you might say, 2 months.
Wow.
And every night you'd see something going on. I remember one day we were supposed to load on an LST because they were getting ready to invade Sicily. And the Italians had built a sea base leading to the channel. And they had some airports down there, which are hangars down there, which were completely destroyed, but they had ramps going down because they kept their seaplanes there. And we were supposed to get on this LST, and the LST was supposed to pull up to this ramp, and we'd be loaded. And it was a British LST, and we were out on the ramp waiting at about 9:30, and we were attacked by this German plane again. We're just sitting there on a ramp, and the German planes are going by strafing us. And boy, all you could do was roll over and just hope that you weren't in it. And I remember they hit the LST, the British LST that was out there, and that thing exploded.
Yep.
And we got out of there and we went back to our base camp, and we didn't get on another LST. Oh, just at that time, I ended up with yellow jaundice because of the health conditions you had, and you were eating lousy food, and I ended up in the hospital, emergency ward. I had a field hospital out there, and I went into a ward that had probably about 3 people in it, and they said, "You'll be here for at least 2 weeks to recover." Well, that night they brought in about 15 injured artillerymen that were by an artillery piece that blew up, and almost all these guys were dead.
Oh my goodness.
And during the course of the night, I think 7 or 8 of them died. And I could hear them moaning all there, and I was sitting on a bunk about probably three bunks away from them. That was one of the things I most remember, was guys dying there. Well, anyway, a first lieutenant of ours was also confined because he had yellow jaundice. It's a very common thing of people to catch it. And our company then moved on to Sicily. And so we were sort of stranded there. And part of the story was, if you got stranded, you were put into replacement troops, and usually you ended up in an infantry outfit, and your chances of survival was very slight. Well, anyway, one day this here lieutenant came over to me, and he says, "Hey," he says, "I got a proposition for you." He says, if you would come with me," he says, "we'll get out of this hospital and we'll rejoin our outfit." And I says, as long as we have your approval, I'm going with you.
Yeah.
So what did we do? We worked our way down to the port, and we boarded a British LST. I don't know why the heck ever let us on.
Yeah, you
But
sort of
anyway,
hitchhiked.
Yeah, we were hitchhiking. And we said we had to rejoin our unit. And they took us into Syracuse, Sicily, which was sort of located on the eastern shore of Sicily.
Okay.
And our company, we found out, was about probably 100 miles away. So we took off, and you could very easily get on the highway, and because there was a lot of army travel, you know, everybody would be willing to give it a chance. We joined our company, and I tell you, when we walked in the area, everybody says, "Where in the heck did you come from?"
Yes,
But
no
anyway,
kidding.
we ended up. We then drove. Oh, we drove through a bunch of Sicilian villages, and they're the dirtiest places you could ever see. They're awful, the conditions that the people lived under. Their sewage is running in the middle of the street, and you'd never want to stay any longer than what you could. We would drive through the street and get out of town and bivouac out in the hills.
Yeah.
Well, anyway, we caught up out of it, and we finally got up to Palermo, Sicily.
Right.
Now that was just about Christmas time there. And the Germans were still in the eastern part of Sicily, and they were fighting their way back to Italy. And we had warships that sort of controlled the ocean there, so when they were on the ocean roads, why, we could bombard them, so they were really under shell fire most of the time, but they wanted to get out of town. They wanted to get out of Sicily as soon as they could. So they did just destroy practically every bridge that they went over and got out of.
Yeah.
Well, anyway, just about that time, Italy decided that they were not going to stay with the Germans. So they quit. And that night, what did they do? They put us on an Italian destroyer to transport us to Palermo. Or no, to transport us to Naples.
To Naples, from Palermo to Naples?
Yeah, and just at that time, our troops had moved into lower Italy, and they had moved up to Naples.
Okay.
And they were probably about 10 miles above Naples when we arrived at the port. And I remember we took that trip on that Italian destroyer. We had about 100 men, and it was the filthiest place I ever saw. I wouldn't go down in the hold. I stayed on top of the deck all night long, and it was a stormy night. And we finally came into Naples in the morning.
And this is in December, around December or January?
Well,
something?
no, it was
still.
It was, yeah, this is about January.
Now January,
or so, yeah.
44.
And we unloaded in Naples, and I remember we got off the destroyer and we had to crawl over hulls that had sunk.
Oh, yeah.
We got to the pier, and then we got to Naples, and we moved to 5th Army headquarters, which was located about probably 10 miles above Naples, in a town called Caserta.
Caserta, General Eisenhower.
General Eisenhower, and we were doing jobs for him, like guard duty and all that stuff. And they put us in a Italian barracks, and I remember about that Italian barracks. There was a small window on one of the back sides, and there was a small town looking in there. And the guys would sneak out of the window and go over to the bars.
Bars, yeah.
I remember one day I went over there and I got a haircut.
Yeah.
I think we ended up paying the guy 2 cents for a haircut.
For a haircut,
and that was about
yeah.
it.
Yeah.
But anyway, we stayed there for about probably 2 or 3 weeks, and then we moved on up.
Well, at Caserta, that General Eisenhower, was he at the Royal Palace?
Yeah.
So it's a huge building,
Oh,
right?
yes, it is.
It's
Sure.
huge.
Yes, it is.
Yeah.
They had really deluxe, and
Like
I remember we were in several formations where Eisenhower would come out and they'd have these parades, you know, and show off to the civilians.
Yep.
But anyway, we joined. This is a letter that we got when we left the United States. This is from Franklin Roosevelt.
Oh, may I
Anyway.
take a picture? Oh, let me take that.
We joined the 7th Army,
Oops.
and we spent quite some time on the Italian front there. We were a service battalion, and whenever something had to be done in the way of a guard duty, running a food depot or a fuel depot, we somehow ended up doing it.
Now, was the 7th Army still
Yeah,
under
we were
Patton?
let's see, yeah, it was under Patton. They call him Blood and Guts Patton.
Okay.
Anyway,
What are the dates that you have there?
well, this was off the coast of
September.
Africa,
Okay.
and this is how we lived a lot of the times. Anyway, we got to Italy.
Oh, did you miss a page?
Oh, wait a minute.
Yeah.
I guess,
Okay. Okay, so here you go.
yeah. Well, we went across, we went inland, and then we got to Bizerti, and we moved to Syracuse, and then we
Syracuse.
went up to Palermo, and then we went over to,
Okay, great.
and we finally, after a lot of misery, we got out of, they captured Caserta. I'll tell you a story about Caserta. We were probably located about 3 or 4 miles away from Caserta, and Caserta was located on a big hill held by the Germans. And they had and there was a river that ran alongside of it. And the Germans had complete control over that river. In fact, anybody that tried to cross it, why, you'd end up just being bombarded. And we were sitting there for quite some time. And I remember there was a British African unit that was a big outfit. I mean, they specialized in having oversized troops. All the guys were probably 6'3", 6'4", and they were well trained. And anyway, one day we were there, and the B-17s started to come over, and they were bombing Caserta.
Yeah.
And I bet they did it for about probably 2 hours, and probably about 300 or 400 planes that flew over and dropped bombs. And you say, nobody's going to live through that. Well, anyway, after the bombing stopped, they moved this here British African troop. There must have been a company of probably 200 or 300 troops. And they were going to make the first attack. And they moved up there, and we were within probably half a mile of them. And I tell you, them guys were just slaughtered. The Germans still had complete control of the hill, and there's nothing they could do about it. And they kept on going, and I bet there wasn't 5% of them that survived.
My goodness.
It was just,
Was that close to Mount Cassino then?
oh yeah,
That,
Mount
was
Cassino,
that
that's
it?
what they were trying to capture.
Oh,
They were trying to capture Mount Cassino.
Okay, and that's where all the bombing was.
Yeah,
and,
and
yep,
that's where the B-17s.
came in.
Well, anyway, it finally ended. We made an attack on Anzio, which Anzio was covered by artillery from a hill some distance away. And anybody on Anzio could be subject to artillery anytime. If you hear the artillery shells, you were all right. If you couldn't hear them, you were the target.
Yep.
Well, anyway, part of our company moved up there about 3 or 4 weeks before, and then we moved up there about a week before, and we were unloading cargo ships, and they'd unload into these here small, they were sort of boat-like things that had wheels on them, and they'd go out and they'd get a load and then bring it in. We'd have to unload it. And anyway, we were there for about a week or so, and they finally attacked, and we moved out. And we moved out, and from Anzio, we started to move up towards Rome.
Right.
And at that time, they declared Rome as an open city, very luckily. And one thing I remember there, we were moving up, and there was some German artillery, I think it was Austrian artillery that worked for the German army, and they were horse-drawn artillery, and they got caught on an open road just about 10 miles before Rome. And we had controlled the air, and our airplanes came through there and completely wiped out them guys. And we moved through, and I tell you, there was dead bodies all over, along with the horses. it's the most hideous smell. And we finally gotten into Rome.
And that was in June of
That
1944,
was
right?
June 5th, because the landing in France was on June 6th.
Right.
We got there about a day early, and
Did you hear about the landing in Normandy at all?
oh yeah, we
Okay.
were well aware that things were going on.
Mm-hmm.
So anyway, we moved into Rome, and this is some of the scenes from Rome. You know, as I was saying, they had this German artillery sitting on top of it, watching the Anzio, and this is part of the artillery that we finally found in Anzio. But we moved into Rome, and this is some of the scenes that happened in Rome. And we got to Rome, and I remember first thing we did, we drove up to that St. Peter's. And our captain was very religious, so he says, I think some of you guys ought to go into the church. And I remember going to the church, and I saw this here statue of Moses, and everybody was kissing the big toe of Moses.
Oh, yes.
And the big toe was practically worn out.
Yes, yes,
Well,
I've
anyway,
seen that, yeah.
We stayed there a little while, and
Oh, thanks.
they had the Colosseum, which was about a block and a half away from St. Peter's. And we went over there. We stayed there about probably an hour or so, and the captain says, load up. He says, we're moving north. Anyway, the Germans were retreating up the coast, and we followed them up to some place called Leghorn, I believe it was. But anyway, it was a coastal town, and the mountains ran right up to the ocean, and it was almost impossible to get through there unless you can control it. And we got up that far, and there was planes continually bombing, and we were trying to break through that pass.
When I get to Albany, I got to tell them
Just at that time, they decided that they were going to pull out our company. So we went back to Anzio. Or no, we went back to Naples. And we got on a LST going over to Lower France.
Right, through the Sardinian Straits,
We went
right?
through there. And I remember when we went through there, we said, boy, what a peaceful looking land. And they were very careful that they didn't want to land there because they didn't know exactly what sort of reception we'd get. But anyway, we finally pulled into just below Marseille. And the Germans were pulling out at the time. They were going up the Rhone River Valley. And we spent about 2 days in Marseille, and I moved in. And we took a trip up to just above Marseille to a small town. I remember we went in there, and it was completely untouched by war. It was run by the French, and they were all on our side. And I remember we went into a shower and had a shower there.
Finally,
they
a shower.
were very cordial. But anyway, we went back to Marseille, and within a day we started following the Germans up the Rhone River Valley. And
that was with the 5th Army?
yeah, that was with the 5th Army.
Still, by this time, Patton's gone, though, because...
No, somebody else was in charge. I
Right,
forget
yeah.
who it was.
Yeah.
But anyway, we went up the
the Rhone River
Rhone
Valley.
River Valley. And we were following the Germans all the time.
And that goes to Lyon and...
And they were destroying all the bridges that they possibly could.
Right.
But we had a good engineering outfit. And as soon as they destroyed a bridge, well, we'd move on. And as a result, they started using the port of Marseille to ship in gasoline, bring it up to France. And it ended up that we got up to the to France, and we moved into a town that was close to Strasbourg, Germany. It's about probably 20 miles away from Strasbourg, and it was in the eastern portion of France.
Is that Epinal? Was that the name
I think
of it?
it was, yeah, Epinal.
Epinal.
Yeah, that's right. Anyway.
And that was where the gasoline dump was. Is that right?
Yeah, right. They had a railhead up there, and we were dispersing gasoline. And I tell you, that is the most stressful job you could possibly get. Because what happens, they string the gasoline cans, 5-gallon gasoline cans, you've probably seen them, but then you refill them out of the tank car. And they've got a pump that's running continuously. And it's got 8 outlets. And there's one guy at each outlet, and they have to keep on moving the hoses from can to can. And we did that for about probably 3 weeks, and boy, I tell you, that's tiring because you can't help but end up doused with gasoline.
Oh, yeah.
And you're in the air all the time. And the thing is, you have to unscrew the cap on the can you're going to fill up.
Yep.
And then you got to tighten the can that you filled.
It's quite the production line.
Yeah, oh, it was. And you'd fill a gas can in perhaps about 2 minutes. So you had 2 minutes to screw caps and unscrew caps. And then they had a gas dump that they established. And this was what, probably 5 miles by 5 miles. And they'd store the gas, they'd probably have storage cans about probably 2,000 in one pile. And they'd always keep them separated by about probably 500 or 600 yards, just so that they, if they got caught fire, well, you don't
You would
lose
roll
one.
the whole thing.
Yeah, right.
So were you a smoker at the time?
Oh, well, you couldn't be a smoker. We were living in this place, and we were filling up them gas cans, and this is a spot where we were living in a house because all the villagers had moved out of the place, and we moved into a house. And we had fairly nice living for a while, but every morning we had to get them gas cans filled, and I mean, it went on and on. And,
Does it say which city that was located in?
well, let me see.
Let's see. Here's a
Well, I think
glass.
it probably is Epinal.
Epinal?
Yeah.
Okay, Epinal?
Uh-huh.
Mm-hmm.
But anyway,
Oh, that looks good.
and
Oh, there we go, Epinal,
yeah,
right?
right. We're down here in Strasbourg or stuff here, and
Mhm.
really it was only a matter of probably about 50, 60 miles, and the Germans were fully occupied here, and they wouldn't cross the Rhine River here, but they were protecting that country, and they were making sure that nobody would invade up this way.
Mm-hmm.
So actually, we were running that gas dump, and we were always fearful of the fact that, boy, they could have attacked us because it was only a matter of probably 40, 50 miles away, and they could
Mhm.
destroy the whole thing.
Yeah.
But I think we had a small number of troops there that were just watching for that all the time. And I remember one day on a day off, we were told of a shrine that was in some woods, perhaps about 3 miles from where we were. And 2 other buddies and myself, we decided to go up there. We had to kill some time because we had some off time. And we went up there, and we were looking at the shrine, and one of the guys turned around. He says, "There's something behind us." He says, "We've got to watch it." And first thing we noticed, a German soldier. And he didn't want to make